Hello and welcome to the Relocation Africa Move Management interview. My name is Quintin Coetzee. I'm Relocation Africa's marketing assistant. I'm joined today by Rolf Lamers from Kings International, who will be talking to us about the ins and outs of moving internationally, both in the current global context and in the future. Rolf started his career in the removals industry after completing his studies in military service in 1990, when he joined Elliott International, now Elliott Mobility. He rose through the ranks, and in 1993, he was offered a managerial position with a partner company in Germany. In 1998, he returned to South Africa and purchased a minority shareholding in Kings International Removers, established in 1923. By 2007, he had purchased the balance of the shareholding from the King family. Unlike all other moving companies, King specializes in international relocations, doing no local or domestic removals, only shipments destined for offshore destinations. So international shipping is their core business. Rolf has also been the president of the South African International Movers Association and brings with him over 30 years of experience in his field. So Rolf, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to chatting about move management with you.
My pleasure to be here.
So to start us off, can you please provide us with an overview of the terminology that is common in the move space? Things like household goods, move management, port to port, any other sort of common terms that you can think of?
Yeah, look, I mean, we commonly use a term called household goods and personal effects. Reason being that is an Incoterm that in most countries would be generally regarded as duty-free imports. So, for instance, when we describe a shipment on a bill of lading, we would need to put on the bill of lading that the contents of this particular container are used household effects and personal effects. Just simply so that our colleagues on the other side, the people receiving that container, wouldn't have a problem in trying to convince or persuade customs at destination that this is indeed a duty-free shipment. It's people's personal items that are not for resale, no commercial value, and that they wouldn't be expected to pay duties and VAT on them. So, there's other terms that are often thrown around in amongst us as movers, shipments that are going to CIF and POE, to port of entry, that type of thing. But, I mean, I think for the intents and purposes for this conversation, we talk about door-to-door removals, which is what we offer. So we would take care of everything from start to finish. So we'll come into the home, pack up everything, load it into container, and see the whole thing through right up until it's delivered at destination, and the packaging and the rubbish has been removed and so forth. So I think, in terms of, there's terms like bills of lading, and, those are the shipping documents. But as I said, for the normal layman terms that we're using here, door-to-door household and personal effects, that's really the crux of the matter. That's what we do. So move management would be the broader context, or the broader terminology, taking care of everything relating to the actual move. For instance, in your particular case, you would be taking care of getting the transferees' children into schools, perhaps helping them find a home, opening banking accounts, getting driver's license, that type of the complete relocation package. So we would fit in on the shipping of the household effects side of things. So that's the section of the move management process that we would take care of.
Perfect, thank you. So would you like to give us an overview of your company and the various services that you provide?
Yeah, as you mentioned in the introduction, Kings was started by the King family back in 1923. It's a well-established name in the Cape Town market. Excuse me. I got to meet the third generation King, a chap called Brett King, he's the same age as me, through the industry. And, as you said in the introduction, over the years I bought more and more shareholding, and today we own the entire company. So we changed tack a little in that in the past we used to do everything move related. So in other words, if you were relocating, from Cape Town to Bloemfontein, we would have done it, or from Cape Town to Johannesburg, or from Johannesburg to Durban. But we found that international moving is our forte. So that's what we do well. It's what our packing crews do every single day. It also differentiates us a little bit from the all the other movers that are out there, and that we, our staff in the office, the staff on the vehicles, the staff that are packing, that's all they ever do every single day is international shipping. So, we're the only company that can truly say that that's all we do, and we are experts. I mean, we do from time to time, we do local moves. We might have an import customer who we may have moved into temporary accommodation when he imported the shipment and now has bought a permanent home, and we would move him locally within the suburb or within the same city. But as I said, it's not our core business. It's not our forte, and our competitive edge doesn't lie there. It lies in the expertise that we provide when we do international shipping. So we've probably been specialized in that field for the last 12 years. So from about 2010, we decided that was what we were going to focus on and specialize on, and we've done really, really well with that. Like I say, there's nobody else in the marketplace in South Africa that can lay claim to being only international moving.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about the standard move process. Can you give us an idea of the various steps involved from that initial survey to the goods arriving at the destination port? What does that process generally look like?
Yeah, so I mean, normally people would make contact with us, so that would either be via telephone or via our website. With the digital age upon us, we've got a very interactive website too. So you would make contact with us. We would then have a discussion with you, find out where you're moving to, what your requirements are, what your needs are, what the size of the shipment is. So a typical case would be somebody would phone us up or make contact with us and say, right, I'm relocating to the UK. I've taken up a new position there, or I've decided to emigrate, and I need to get my household effects across. We would then ask the obvious questions. Is it an entire home? Is it just a part home? Are there cars? Are there pets? Just so that we know what the customer's needs are. And then we would send a representative out to go and view the items that need to be moved. And again, to get back to the digital age, we now also offer video surveys. So, during COVID and what that taught us was that, we can't just march into someone's homes anymore without a mask on. So we've developed technology whereby we interact with you via your smartphone, via the camera on your smartphone. You walk us through your home. You open up your cupboards for us. You show us the access, where we can park the trucks, what items need specialized crating, that sort of thing. And we would then do the survey as such. We may ask you to measure something. So let's say there's a large mirror that would require crating. We may ask you just to measure up so that we have those dimensions. But essentially, we can all do that remotely nowadays. But the traditional way would be for one of our gentlemen or one of our representatives to come out to the person's home, do the survey, discuss any questions that the client may have, etc., and then basically tailor-make a bespoke quotation for your particular needs. And as I said earlier, this would include us coming in to do the packing, sometimes even deliver some boxes for some pre-packing. You might want to pack your own personal clothing, some of those items. I'll just allude to that a little bit later, what the pros and cons of doing your own packing. But, essentially we do all the packing, we do all the crating, the specialized packaging and so forth. We would then load the items into a container at your residence. We would then transport that, we'd make up an inventory during the packing process, check off the items as they're loaded into the container. The container gets sealed with a customs seal at your residence, and it then essentially departs straight away down to the port and goes into the stacks for the next vessel that is arriving. We take care of all the export customs clearance, the port charges that are involved, the trucking charges from your home to the port. We then also ensure that the container is then export cleared and loaded onto the container, onto the vessel. We offer you tracking services while the vessel is en route to the final destination. We'd also give you at the time of the packing, you'll receive a letter from us or some information with the name of the vessel, the container numbers, the seal numbers, who our partners are at destination, who to contact when you get there. We'd also obviously then forward your contact details to our partners at destination. So the two of you would reach out to one another, and you'd make contact well before the vessel actually docks at the arriving port. probably about 2 weeks to 10 days prior to arrival, they would make contact with you, get you to fill out a couple of customs documents. They would have received like the shipping line, bill of lading, which I alluded to earlier, the packing list, etc. So you'll be talking to one another, and customs clearing process would be taking place in the background, so that hopefully, and more often than not, the clearance would have been effected before the vessel's arrival at destination. So customs would have said, all right, we've had a look at the paperwork, it's all in order. Person has got a visa, or is a returning European resident, or whatever the case may be. They may well just grant you a clearance without a physical examination. From time to time, they do, however, request an exam, in which case they may just require an X-ray exam where they scan the entire container. And if they happen to find anything that's untoward, or any weapons or ammunition or alcohol, for instance, that hasn't been declared, then they may well call for a full examination. But as I said, 9 times out of 10, these things generally sail through. You've got to bear in mind that these goods are 9 times out of 10, well, always, if it's household and personal effects and your paperwork is in order, these are duty-free imports. So there's no reason for customs at destination to be wanting to open anything, because what are they going to find and what duties are they going to generate from it? They'd be more interested in the commercial shipments anyway. But so the shipment gets cleared. Our partner company on the other side then makes arrangements to have the container collected from the port and then gets delivered directly to your home. If you have a home that's ready to move into, they'll bring the container to your home, they'll unload it, they'll unwrap it, place the items in the various rooms as indicated by you. They'd unpack the contents of the boxes onto flat surfaces, just really for there to be no confusion. If you ask our packing crews on the other side to pack your cupboards for you, your wife won't know where the salt and pepper shaker is tonight when she's trying to cook, or they won't know where to put your clothing and in what order and sequence and so forth. So we generally pack it onto flat surfaces. Sometimes people would prefer to unpack their own personal effects. That's also fine. We would then just arrange to have those empty boxes collected at a later stage. So, that in this nutshell is kind of what happens door to door. I just want to go back to, in terms of doing your own packaging. So there's 2 aspects to consider here. The one is an insurance aspect, which means that anything that you've packed yourself, the insurance wouldn't cover you for any breakages or damages or losses. They will argue that you're not a professional mover, you're not a professional packer. They can't guarantee or insure your handiwork. So hence the reason why, if Kings does the packing, if the mover does the packing, they can cover you for anything like that. If you choose to do your own packing, then they wouldn't. So we always recommend that you limit this self-packing to personal items, some clothing, things that cannot break. And then also just leave those boxes open for us just to inspect that, A, it is what you say it is. It is books that are packed in those boxes. It is clothing. And then we will seal them, and then we would put on the inventory packed by Kings, because we've then closed it. And then we can also double check whether it's been packed sufficiently. So if we find out that there are items that we feel that could be under risk during transit, we'll then highlight that to you, and then we would prefer to rather do the packing ourselves, just from an insurance point of view, that there can be no arguments who did the packing. The second aspect to consider is, from a customs point of view, customs generally are rather skeptical about anything packed by owner. They tend to wonder what the person is trying to hide. So we don't want to attract any unnecessary or unwarranted attention to anything within the container. So we kind of often just advise you, don't put anything packed by owner inside the container, because you almost, more often than not, inviting them to just inspect, to make sure that if you say it is books, that it actually is books, and that you're not hiding anything. So yeah, that's in a nutshell the whole process, start to finish. One thing, obviously, if we do unpack items on the other side and we find that there's items that are damaged or missing or broken or whatever the case is, insurance is another offering that we offer. We will take care of that claim, and there is a process that needs to be followed. But yeah, if there's insurance claims afterwards, you remain involved. You would report the claim with us. We forward that on to the insurers and so forth. Remain involved until it's settled.
Thank you. So this is a question that I imagine might come up across many different kinds of clients, are there general timelines that you would be able to provide to a client in terms of a minimum and maximum time frame to ship those goods out, to have them arrive, just as an idea? Or does it very much depend on that specific family, where they're moving to and from, which vessel those goods are on? How clear is that kind of thing from the offset?
Yeah, look, very much the same as when you're flying to your final destination. The further away a place is, the longer it's going to take to get there. So, for instance, if you were moving to Vancouver in Canada, it's quite a journey. It would go from Cape Town towards Singapore, somewhere in the east, and from there, it'll head off towards Canada. And that transit time would be closer to 8 to 10 weeks. Whereas a shipment that's going to Europe, the transit time is somewhere between Cape Town and the European ports is 3.5 to 4 weeks. So, the transit time depends on two things: the destination where you're finally going to, and also whether you are going in your own container, or if you are part of what we call a groupage container, where you are sharing the container with various other parties. The benefit with that is that you would only pay for the portion of the container that you would utilize. The drawback with that, so that's the benefit. The negative with that is you have to wait for us to fill that container until it can depart. And of course, when we come and fetch your items, you might have just missed one, in which case you'd be the first into the next one. Then we've got to wait until it fills. Or you may just be lucky that your volume that you've got is just what we're looking for to fill a container. And if it's going to Europe, it'll be there within the next 4 to 5 weeks. But yeah, generally that's it. I mean, we would tell you at the time of quoting already what you can expect, what a realistic transit time is. I mean, obviously you need to plan, for the arrival of your goods at some stage. You need to have a place to put these goods into. And as I said earlier, our export team would give you something in writing as to when that vessel is leaving, when it's due to arrive at the port. And then, normally clearance at destination takes somewhere between a week to 10 days. So if you know something is arriving on the 1st of August, around about the second week of August, you will receive those goods. But we keep you informed throughout. I mean, it's not like we suddenly arrive at your doorstep one day with a great big truck with a container on the back and say, Gerard, where do you want us to put this? You'll be kept informed.
Perfect. And you did mention tracking. I was going to ask about that. So it can be expected that an assignee at any given point in time would be able to find out where their goods are. If anything was to be sped up or delayed, that they would receive a notification of that so that everything could be timed appropriately. Is that right?
So essentially, everything up until the vessel departs would be handled by King. So our staff would keep you informed. So, right, this is, here's your packing list. This is the boat it's on. This is when it's leaving. This is where you can track it, etc., etc. So we would then, once the vessel departs, we would send all this information to the receiving party, our partners on the other side at destination, and they would be tracking that vessel, as will you, as will we. And, generally the vessels stick to a pretty rigid schedule. It's much the same as the airlines. The plane doesn't just in mid-flight decide, oh, well, let's go pick up a few passengers in London if we're headed towards New York. It's got a schedule. It's heading in that direction. So those vessels need to get to their port of destination by a particular date because they've been booked a berth and they need to get there. But we do monitor it. And sometimes, as we've had just recently in the last couple of days, there are storms in the ports and things are delayed. Vessels are delayed, bad seas. There might be strike action, whatever the case is. But we keep you informed. You'll probably know about it too. And the guys that are receiving, the partners that are receiving that container would be tracking it too, because they need to prepare for that vessel's arrival and do the clearance and get the container delivered and so forth. So the moving company will be keeping you updated as to where we are in the process. And like I said just now, it's not that we would suddenly arrive at your doorstep one day and say, well, here we are, So typically the guys would keep you informed, say, right, we've received information from King's. The vessel is due to arrive at such and such a date. We'll monitor it. And have you got customs paperwork? Can we get a copy of your passport? Can you come in and sign some paperwork, etc.? And then they'll phone you back and say, right, we've submitted the documents to customs. customs have approved it, they've cleared it, there's no problem. Or they might inform you that customs have decided they want to do an inspection. So you're informed, and they'll tell you what the process is. So instead of the container going straight to your home, the container would then have to go to their warehouse for the inspection, and then they'll keep you informed during that process as well, and say, right, customs were here this morning, they inspected it, they found a bottle of brandy that wasn't declared, there's a problem, or whatever the case is. And then or they'll hopefully tell you, right, customs has cleared the goods, we are ready to deliver. Can we come tomorrow? Can we come next week? We have availability on Thursday, and then you'll agree to a delivery date, and they'll pitch up then. So that's in a nutshell how you can track it. We'll give you the tracking details. You'd have to go onto the shipping company's website. Simple, easy, but there are many people who don't track their own shipments. They just wait for that call from the destination agent to inform them, right, boat has arrived, we've got clearance, when can we deliver?
Perfect, thank you. So I know when I think about moving overseas, I not only think about sea freight, I think about planes. So would it be an option for a client to transport some or all of their goods via air freight as well? And what would you say the pros and cons are for air freight versus sea freight?
Quintin, yes, it's always an option. The pros and cons are, the pros are air freight gets there much quicker, and the con is that it costs quite a lot more. In fact, a heck of a lot more. But where it becomes interesting for our customers is that you're going to be without your goods for a period of 5 to 12 weeks, perhaps, and we could then do a smaller air freight shipment of essentials. So, maybe a change of clothing, some computer items, maybe a toy or two for the kids to keep them busy, that sort of thing. So there we would, again, provide you with a bespoke quote based on your requirements, which is based on weight. So the larger something is and the more it weighs, the more it's going to cost to get there. So it becomes an economic question. Now, a lot of employers, if they are employing new staff from abroad, expat staff, they would give them an allowance for a sea shipment, and more often than not also give them an allowance for an air shipment for these essential items. And that would be limited. They would say, right, each person 100 kilograms, or they'd say 1 cubic meter of space, pack whatever you want in there, and we can get that shipped as air, just so that you've got like a starter pack when you arrive there. Now, we've also got a sister company, a second company that we've started back in 2007 called Excess Luggage. So we would essentially, use the excess luggage service to get the goods across. Again, we've got two different options there. The one is where the goods just arrive at the airport. So if you're moving to London, we can fly it into London Heathrow. You would go and fetch it at Heathrow. So, if it's something that's small enough to fit in your car, you can go and do that. That's the cheaper alternative. Or we can do a door-to-door delivery as we do with a sea shipment. So we would take care of the customs clearance on the other side, and then our partners that side would fetch it at Heathrow and have it delivered to your home. But again, I've got to stress, air freight, very good, quick, it's beautiful. It does get costly. The more something weighs, the bigger something is, the more expensive that becomes.
Thank you. So another item of potential interest, I would imagine, is personal vehicles. Some clients might be interested in taking their cars with them when they emigrate. What would the considerations need to be if someone, say, wanted to take their vehicle with them because it had sentimental value, financial value, or just for comfort levels? What would the considerations need to be in terms of paperwork, licensing, and even being able to legally take their car with them to their new country?
Yeah. So cars do get shipped, and each country has got different import requirements or import regulations when it comes to the importation of cars. South Africa, for example, if you wanted to import a car into South Africa, you have to jump through a myriad of hoops. For one, left-hand drive cars cannot be imported. Well, they can if they're antique and manufactured before 2000. There are loopholes where we can import left-hand drive vehicles, but generally, if you go on Auto Trader in the USA and you see a nice Tundra bakkie that you want to import into South Africa, you're not going to be allowed to. There are very specific requirements. You can only import a car into South Africa if you're a first-time immigrant, you're a permanent resident, you have a permanent residency visa as a first-time immigrant. If you're a returning South African, for instance, you wouldn't be able to import a car into South Africa unless there are very, very specific conditions. For instance, you officially immigrated when you left South Africa to go and live abroad, and you cut all ties with South Africa, and you took up new residency and perhaps even nationality at destination. And now you're coming back to South Africa and you want to make South Africa your home again. They may grant you permission to import one car per family. So each country around the world has got their own set of circumstances, own set of rules as to who is allowed to bring in cars. But, for instance, if you want to ship a car to the UK, right-hand drive, everything is hunky-dory. They're driving the same side of the road as we do. We can ship cars across. What you do find, however, is that quite often the cars at destination tend to be cheaper than what they are here. So once you've done the sum of, let's say you've got a Ford Focus motor car and you find out what it costs to replace in the UK, once you've added up what you can sell it for in South Africa, what the costs are to ship it to the UK, quite often the people come to the conclusion, they say, well, we may as well just buy a second-hand one there. When we get there, we've got it immediately. We don't have to wait 6 weeks for it to arrive in the UK, and we don't have any hassles to get it through the MOT and the roadworthy and to have it registered and so forth. The other consideration is to get the car out of South Africa. There are certain things you have to do. You need to obtain a police clearance certificate confirming that this vehicle is not wanted for any criminal activity or whatever the case is. So there's a process that needs to be followed. It'll take a day of your life to stand in queues and to get all this paperwork for us. But yes, we can, place a container inside a car. We recently did a boat. That's another thing. We've done a plane in the past. We can ship anything really. If it fits in a container, we can get it going. So cars are an option. It's just you need to do your homework prior. We've had cases where people have not done their homework, where they've shipped cars to South Africa. They've arrived at the port and we cannot get them customs cleared. They've got to be turned around and shipped back to where they came from. So if you are thinking of taking your car, let us know. This is part of that initial interview that I spoke about. When you make contact with us, either via the emails or the internet or website, or you give us a call, we would question you. Is it an entire household? Is there a motorbike to go? Is there a motor car? That type of thing. So it's a consideration. And it's not an impossibility. We do it regularly, and just depends on where you're going to. Certain countries have certain regulations, like Australia, for instance, are very similar to South Africa. You would be expected to pay duties because they're trying to protect their local motor industry that side. So they want to make it not so cheap and not so easy for you to import a car. They'd rather want you to buy a second-hand vehicle when you get, or even better, buy a new vehicle when you.
So perhaps a consideration for some might be off timing in terms of when they are there and when their goods are there. So if, for example, an expat was to arrive after their goods had arrived, say they thought that they would be on time and then something happened, there was a delay back home and they missed their predetermined arrival, or they arrived and had to go back again and then missed the goods, where would those goods traditionally be stored? Would they be kept at the port? Would they be moved to a special storage facility? Might they be delivered to the new home and the expats would arrive there with a bunch of boxes inside the home? How might that situation unfold?
So, Quintin, it's an important question, because in most countries, the country expects you to arrive before your furniture does. So they want to ensure that the person who owns these goods is actually there. So you can imagine it would be the easiest thing to circumvent import duties and taxes for me to send my family in Germany a container full of stuff under the pretense that I'm going to move there, and then I'll pull out at the last minute and I don't arrive. If that happens, the recipient on the other side is going to pay import duties. So it's important that that if these type of delays happen, we need to know about it. Our partners at destination need to know about it, because they may very well not be able to get the customs clearance done because you have not arrived yet. So assuming that has happened, there are a couple of options available. Either way, the goods would then have to be stored under bond. So they're not technically customs cleared, and the customs at destination will say, all right, we understand the situation. We allow the goods to be offloaded from the vessel. Then there's a choice. Now, you can either leave the goods inside the container at a depot near the port. However, the shipping line wants its container back, because that's how they're earning money, when that container is back on another boat going somewhere else. So they would charge you storage, and they would charge you detention and demurrage fees, which are astronomical. For a 20-foot container, for instance, it will be around about $90 a day. A 40-foot container, probably double that. So you're looking at massive costs very quickly. So the alternative to that is that our partner on the other side, so because we're all in the international moving field, we all have access to bond storage or bonded storage facilities. That simply means that it's a specific store that is designed to store goods that have not been customs cleared. So it's a very strict process of checking these goods into that storage facility. Customs can come at any moment in time and say, right, you guys imported a Mr. Quintin Coetzee's shipment 3 weeks ago. Where is it? And according to the inventory, there were 37 items. Where are those 37 items? And you better be able to show them where they are in that bond store. Otherwise, there's massive fines. We have to put down big deposits for the bond store facility, etc., and that would then just be taken up by the authorities. So you don't want to be messing around there. But to answer your question, we can advise the agents on the other side that they need to put it into their bonded facilities. They would quote you what those costs are. And again, the cost would depend on the size of container, the number of items, the volume of effects that are being stored in that container, in that storage facility. And then essentially what happens is that stuff lies in limbo until you finally get there. Then they can take your passport and your visa and everything to the authorities and say, right, Quintin has now arrived. The stuff is in our bonded facility. We now want to get it out of bond. So it's another customs entry where you get it out of bond, and they say, right, Quintin's here. We're happy now. We can deliver it. And in that case, that process kicks off again, where they contact you and say, right, we can deliver it next Tuesday. Are you ready for it? Can we deliver it? And so forth. But, keeping it in the container is first prize. So if it's a couple of days, if you delayed for whatever reason by a few days, it's then leaving it in the container at the port facility is an option. And, if it's 1 or 2 days, it's not that much. But if you're going into weeks and months, it's best to get it out of the container, get it into a bonded facility, and get that container back to the shipping line, because they're quite greedy when it comes to charging you for that.
So you mentioned that there would be insurance involved when those goods were shipped. Is that sort of a tiered system where clients would be able to choose a preferred coverage percentage on their items? Is it a standard thing that's applied just depending on the value of the particular items? And then as a second part to that question, if you could please comment on what might happen if things do go wrong, if something does get lost or damaged, how would that insurance kick in?
So insurance is an optional extra that we offer as part of the service. It's not automatically included. So it's up to the person moving to decide, whether they want insurance. Many people decide that they'll take the risk and they'll ship it without any cover. We are, however, liable. So let's say, for argument's sake, a person has got no insurance cover, and our packers are tossing their flat screen TV around and it breaks. And there's gross negligence on our part, or not even negligence on our part. We haven't taken necessary precautions or care. We are liable for that. And as owner of the company, I would put my hand up and say, right, we have messed that up. We will buy you a new TV. But that, again, that's something that that is a personal discussion that we will have. But ideally, you need to decide whether that well, whether you want to take insurance, and ideally you'll decide, yes, I want to take insurance cover for this eventuality in case the ship sinks, in case there's a disaster. And then we offer two types of cover. One is a total loss, which would only cover you if you never see your goods again. In other words, the ship has sunk, or there's been a disaster. There's been a storm and your container fell overboard and it's lying at the bottom of the ocean. So that it will only pay out if you never see your goods again. The better cover, and that's obviously cheaper than the all risks cover as well. The better cover would be all risks, in which case, and this is the one that most people take. So if we get to the other side and your television set doesn't work, your fridge doesn't work, a table leg is broken off, there's an item missing, we would, or the insurance would then replace that or repair that, or whatever the case is. However, it comes with a bit of homework. We need an itemized inventory of the items, a valued inventory of the items. So we provide you with a pre-printed list, which has got your perfect household in there. There's things on the list that you wouldn't be shipping, and there might be things in your home that are not on the list, but there's enough spaces to fill that in. You can do your own Excel spreadsheet. We don't really care how that list gets tabulated. We need that list. We need to have a 65-inch JVC television set, and the replacement value being £1,000, and each item needs to be valued. In terms of clothing and so forth, we can lump together values, but if you have 10 suits and one of them is a particularly expensive one, or an evening dress if you're a lady, 10 evening dresses and the 10,000 rand cover, but there's one Versace dress that's worth 5,000, just so that if that particular dress, because Murphy's Law, it's always that one that goes missing or gets damaged or needs repairs, so that there can be no argument later on that what the value was of the particular item. So it's probably the one thing that's the most cumbersome to do, and people hate it, whereby they have to draw up that insurance inventory. Now, our insurers offer a service which comes at an extra cost, where an assessor comes out to your home and actually values the items for you. As I said, it comes at an extra cost. And we've also found that they quite often, more often than not, they would tend to rather over-insure just to be on the safe side. And because you pay a percentage of the value as the insurance cover, obviously the higher the value is, the more you're going to pay for the insurance cover. So it becomes a bit of a balancing act. So again, there are 100 ways to kill this problem, and we would hold your hand through it. So we would, do you want insurance, yes or no? Yes, you want insurance. Do you want total loss or all risks? You want all risks? Great. You need to fill out this list. Do you need any assistance when you fill out the list? We can arrange all that for you. In a perfect world, I'd say get the insurers to do the list for you. Then there can be no arguments later. The process would be you have 14 days after the goods have been delivered in which to submit a claim. So it's not like the movers move out and you phone the next day and say, oh, we switched the fridge on and it doesn't work. It's not like we say, well, you didn't tell us yesterday. You've got 14 days to go through everything, to unpack everything, to make absolutely sure that everything's there, everything's accounted for, everything's in working order, and so forth. And then it's a simple-ish situation as with any insurance claim. We'd ask you to fill out a few forms. You need to list the items. You need to get quotes to repair or replace them. Get them back to us. As I say, we tabulate everything here. We remain involved. We actually act as the middleman between you and the insurers and stay involved until that claim is then settled.
Thank you. And so just to touch on very valuable goods, if a client, say, for example, had an extremely valuable work of art, a very valuable instrument, something that held great sentimental value to them, anything that they were just extremely worried might get damaged or lost, would they be able to request a special level of packaging for that item, perhaps intensive care during the handling process, or would those goods be subject to the same kinds of packaging and handling as everything else?
So to come back to the insurance aspect here, so anything that is valued on that list at more than 50,000 Rand would require some kind of formal valuation certificate. So if you have a Persian rug that's worth more than 50 grand, or whatever the case is, and a work of art, highlight that to us in the initial conversations that you're having with us. Hopefully one of us would ask the necessary questions, but sometimes people forget. But when we're going through your home through the virtual survey, or the surveyors in your home mention that to us, say this painting here is an heirloom, it's worth a lot of money, it's very fragile, we don't want anything to happen to it. There's always that one piece in a home. I call it the piece de resistance, the one thing that it doesn't matter what you do, don't mess with that. So from an insurance point of view, as I said, if the value is high, get a valuation certificate, etc., etc. Now, the insurance would expect us, for such a high value item, not to just give it the willy-nilly wrapping that we would do for anything normal. So we would need to package it in such a way to ensure that enough care has been taken to prevent anything possibly happening to that item during transit. So to stick with an example of an artwork, so we would build a crate for that. So we would export wrap it. So the packaging would mean we wrap it in tissue paper, gets wrapped in a material called cushion craft, which is essentially bubble wrap with some. It's a material that's thicker than paper, but not as thick as cardboard. It's laminated to both sides of the bubble plastic, so it's cushioning it. We'd give it a couple of layers of that, and then we would build an enclosed crate around that particular item. Now, there's a company that we use called Ubusi. It's a honeycomb material. It's essentially the same material that you find on the whiteboards in an office or in a classroom. It's that honeycomb material on the back onto which the white board is laminated on. So it's the new way. It's all made from recycled material. It's reusable. It's extremely light, but it's extremely durable and strong. So we have those crates custom made for you. So hence, again, the reason why we ask you to measure them, or our surveyor, when he's in your home, he would measure that. And we would have those manufactured prior to us coming to do the actual packaging. So we've done some really fragile and expensive items, and they've arrived very successfully at destination. Chandeliers is another good example. So we would hang a chandelier from a railing and fill up. We would put it into. We have wardrobe cartons where we would hang your suits and evening dresses in. So it's got a rail running across the top of that particular box. So we'd essentially hang a chandelier in the same way and fill up that entire box with polystyrene chips so that the chandelier cannot move during transit. Also, then obviously make damn sure we don't load a fridge on top of it or a sofa. We would put it loaded in the container in such a way that it doesn't stand any chance of getting damaged during transit.
Perfect. I'm sure that's very reassuring to know, because I'm sure there's future expat families with those special items, random items, for sure.
Every home. Sorry to interrupt. Every home is different. Everyone has got something there that is different to the next. So that's why it's important that we view the items. We don't want a situation where we arrive on the day and here's a chandelier that we didn't know about and we completely unprepared for it. I mean, they have to be taken down by an electrician. Invariably, another chandelier or another light fitting has to be fitted in place of that chandelier that we're shipping. And our packers are not electricians, so we need to make sure that there's a professional there to take it down, to rehang something in its place, that we have a crate specifically built for this particular chandelier or this particular work of art. So it's important that we do the homework before the day that we actually do the packing, which is why it's essential that somebody either comes to your home to view or we do that virtual survey. It just takes out that element of surprise that would await us.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure that'll be very reassuring for our future viewers, future immigrants, to know that their special items will be well cared for. And along the same vein, I know there are a number of people who take their pets with them when they move overseas. Now, those animals are not allowed to go in the cabin of the plane unless it's a service animal, but there are concerns for putting that animal in a crate in the cargo hold. So are you able to assist with that kind of thing? Do you have partners involved with that? How does that process usually go?
Yeah, so we don't do that. It's not our speciality. And there's all sorts of other hoops you have to jump through before you're licensed to be able to move and transport animals. So we have a number of partner companies that we partner with. We would assist, certainly, again, right at the beginning when we ask you, you have cars, motorbikes, pets, that type of thing. We would then get one of those companies to make contact with you, find out what the needs are, and they would guide you through that entire process. So quite often the case is where we get a contract from an employer where they say, right, take care of Quintin's move, including the pets and including moving the car and whatever. So we would then arrange all that. So we would contact to a specialty pets travel company. We would remain involved, make sure that that is taken care of. But they would be the ones liaising with you specifically to the individual needs. But we would remain, again, like with insurance, we'd remain involved, see the process through to ensure that those pets arrive safely at destination. I mean, some countries expect you to quarantine your pets prior to arrival. Others would expect you to quarantine after arrival. So these are all the type of things we would know. We'd be able to look that up. But the pets travel company would guide you through that. They would put your mind at ease that everything's taken care of. Certain vaccinations, and these days your animals need to be chipped and so forth. So they know what the requirements are. They'll guide you through what needs to be done. They need to get a state veterinarian certificate to make sure the animal is healthy, etc., etc. It's not something that is typically removals or transport related. That's why we leave it up to the experts.
Thank you. And so as we know, this process of moving overseas can at times be very stressful, different levels of stress for different people involved. There may be a lot of culture shock. There may be added stress because of strict timelines, the need to package your own goods, really anything involved with the process. Is there anything that you can suggest that families can do to work together to make moving overseas a little bit more tolerable, a little less stressful?
Look, I can't tell you how many times we've moved people that have never, ever been to the country that they're moving to. They've just decided we're going to New Zealand. That'll be a culture shock when you get there. If you have small children, I did this when I came back from Germany to South Africa. My kids were 1 and 3 years old. It was like, I'll never forget the day that the container arrived. It was like Christmas for them, It was a completely new environment for them. And that, moving is stressful. The story goes that, it's like, it's more stressful than death. Public speaking was number one. I forget what's number two, but relocation was number three in the list. And then everything else after that almost paled into insignificance. So it's not easy. You've got to have your wits about yourself when you do that. When you arrive, I mean, I take myself, we got to Germany and it's all like a honeymoon and everything's new and everything is nice and everything works. And then something happens and then you start questioning, why did we even come here? And then something terrible happens. You say, we should have never, ever done this. But you need to, as a family, decide we are doing this. And we decided we're going to stay at least 3 years because that was the contract that I'd signed. There was no turning back. Once we're there, it didn't matter how tough it became. Our peg in the ground was 3 years, and we ended up staying close to 5 years. And it becomes easier the longer you are there. Sometimes in the culture shock is just too great. We've moved many a South African family across halfway around the world, and they've returned. It's not always what everybody thought it was going to be. It's also just thinking of something practical. A lot of our customers ship their kids out when they move. When they're little, they take them to granny or whatever, and they're out of the house. And that evening they come back and their toys are all gone. Their bed's gone. The favorite teddy bear is no longer there. Rather leave them there. I mean, our packers work with kids every day. They're nobody's way. We can even make up a box for them to pack their own teddies into, and we'll help them seal it and so forth. Let the family be part of the actual moving experience so that they understand going into a box. And when that container arrives on the other side, they remember, there was my teddy. I mean, my kid had a tractor that had an engine noise in the steering wheel. And when we opened up the container, there was this vibrating sound coming from within the stack of furniture. And he immediately recognized the sound as his tractor. So somehow something had obviously moved and activated this sound that the tractor makes. And when he saw that, like I said, it was like Christmas. He was driving around the garden, happy that everything's there. So every family, again, like everyone's home is different. Everyone's family situation is different. It helps if you've got family and friends on the other side that you maybe can go and visit and have a look at. And I know visiting them as a holiday and living there is a completely different thing, but it's a culture shock, especially if it's a language barrier. My wife couldn't speak German when we got there, so there's all these things that you don't really think about. I mean, the first time she put our bank card into an ATM, it spoke German to her. The language that she had to read was German. These things that you're not prepared for, that become difficult. But it's things that 30 years later or 20 years later, you look back and you say, that's how we learn.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, that's the end of my list of questions. So I just want to say a big thank you to you, Rolf, for joining me today, sharing your insights about moving internationally with me and with our future viewers. It's been very interesting for me, learning from the foundation of what very little I know about moving overseas, and I'm sure it will be for a number of our future viewers and future expat families. So we really appreciate your time, making yourself available, sharing your insights. I do also want to mention that Relocation Africa offers move management services for those businesses who don't have the time to oversee those sorts of projects, as well as packing and unpacking oversight if an assignee can't be present on the move day. So if anyone would like more information about those services, please feel free to contact us via marketing@relocationafrica.com. But Rolf, again, I really do appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much for sharing your insights and joining me today.
It's my pleasure. And if anybody wants to contact us directly with questions, I'm available. I might be the owner of the company, but they can phone me personally. Happy to answer anything.
Perfect. Thank you again. Keep well.